Welcome back to the CSC Garage. Today we're going to be looking at the SG400. What we're going to do is replace the handlebars, the mirror, brake lever, and the bar ends. To do this is really an easy job. Just needs a few simple tools. We're going to use a Phillips screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, 10mm socket, an 8mm socket, and a 5 and a 6mm Allen. Come on, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is take off the bar ends. As you can see, this bike was dropped and sustained some minor damage. One of the things being the bar end was bent. To remove that, I'm just going to take my 5mm Allen a little more difficult because it's bent, but it released the tension on the nut and allowed it to slide out. And the next step is going to be to remove the mirrors, get those out of the way. You could use a 17mm wrench if needed. A lot of times for removal, you can just kind of pop them loose and then turn those right out. We will remove the clutch perch, the lever and the perch. There wasn't any damage to this, so we're going to reuse it so we don't even have to pull the cable out. We're just going to remove it at the clamp. And there are some wires going to the switch on it. If you need to pop those out, you can, and just let it hang out of the way. The next thing we'll remove is the switch housing on the left side. It's attached with 2 Phillips screws from the bottom. As you can see inside the housing, when we reinstall, we'll be lining up this pin with the hole in the top of the handlebar. Now we're going to remove the grip from this bar. We can actually reuse these. We have some available for purchase if you needed to replace them. This one's a little loose, but I'm going to use compressed air to help slide it off easier. Now we're going to remove the front brake housing, the reservoir, the master cylinder, this whole unit. And we'll do that by removing these 8mm bolts. We'll unplug the switch wires and then let it gently hang while we remove the switch housing and also the throttle. Now to start the throttle, what I want to do is take the tension off the throttle. So I'll make my adjustment all the way in to give the most free play on the throttle cable. Now we can remove the switch housing. Now to remove the throttle, I can pull some tension on the cable and then slide it out. It fits in that slot. That way the grip stays on the throttle body, and we can reinstall it really easily on the new bars. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the handlebars, which require us to remove this mount. You've got decorative covers on some of these motorcycles. If you do, you can use your fingernail or a flathead screwdriver and just pop those decorative buttons right off. And that gives us access to the 6mm Allen screws. Now we're ready to reinstall the new bars. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on each of those screws that are going to hold the bar clamp on. And now I'm ready to line up my bars. I'm using the lines here as a guide on where to line them, and I can kind of look from the side and get the correct angle of the bars. So when you're putting the screws back in, you want them snug and firm, but leave enough slack so that you can make any fine tunes that you need to the bar angle. Once you find that perfect angle you're looking for, then you can go back and tighten the screws. And finally, replace the decorative buttons. I'm ready now to replace the switch housing and clutch perch. I'll start with the switch housing. I'm making sure I line up that pin with the hole. Now to replace the Phillips head screws. As you replace the wires to the switch, you want to make sure not only the rubber shield gets over the tab, but also the metal. Make sure the tab's sliding into the metal for good connection. Now we're going to replace the switch housing and brake perch. Same thing, we want to make sure that we're aligning the pin. But I've also got to put the throttle back on. So now is the time that I want to do that before everything's too secure. Otherwise, I won't have enough room to get the cable on it. Now we're going to reinstall the grip on the left side of the handlebar. To do this, I'm going to use a little bit of Griplock glue just to help this. I've heard of people using super glue. I've heard of people using hairspray, but this tends to be a really good product that we've got here. And it holds things in place quite nicely. I'm just going to put a little bit inside. Could put it on the handle as well, but just put a little bit on the edge and it'll push itself through. And we'll wipe up the excess that kind of came out the end and let that cure for some hours. Now we're going to be replacing the front brake lever, and to do so we'll first remove the 10mm locking nut from the bottom. And use a flathead to pull out the pivot point. Before replacing this, I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on that pivot so that I get a smooth operation for some time to come. Now we're ready to reinstall the bar end. The way this works, the bolt goes through and the nut is attached on the end. As I tighten that bolt, the nut's gonna pinch these rubber pieces in, causing them to swell and firmly mount inside the bar. This is easier to do, much easier to do with a power tool if you have it. If not, you can do it by hand, but you might need to kind of preload the tension on the nut to get it just at the point before it grips the inside of the bar. Now we're ready to put in the throttle side. I do want to make sure that on this side, after I've gotten the bar end in, I still have a snappy throttle. There's no friction here, throttle's operating correctly, and the bar end is attached firmly. I'm ready to put the mirrors back on. The way they work, the threaded stud at the bottom of the mirror threads into the perch. Once I get it close to the bottom, I can then use this locking nut to tighten it into place. So get it in position where I want it and turn that nut. If you don't have a wrench with you, you can kind of tighten it, get it in the right position and tighten it by hand. As you see, the perch is moving some. I'm gonna make my adjustments on those as a final step to make sure they're level with each other. Now the mirror is on. As I mentioned, I could have used this 17mm wrench to tighten that in place as well. And now for the final adjustment of the perches on both sides. I want them to be even. You can close your eyes and grab the bars. Sometimes you can feel if one's off or not. Once you have them in just the right position, then you finally put your final torque on the clamps. Thanks for joining us again here at the CSC Garage. If you need handlebars or mirrors or brake levers or new grips, be sure to check us out at cscmotorcycles.com. We've got plenty of replacements there, all kinds of parts. Don't hesitate. Don't ride around with a bent lever. Make yourself comfortable. Give us a call or check us out online. We'd be glad to help you out. But most importantly, enjoy the ride.